Okay, so welcome today to the new Civics and Citizenship course package webinar. We have two amazing presenters today, but first of all, I just want to start with a land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge that we're gathered in various or in the territories of various Indigenous peoples, and we further recognize their stewardship of these lands in which we live, learn, work, and play. I don't know if you want to go to the next slide there, Corto.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah, and one more. So this webinar is hosted by OHASSTA. OHASSTA is the Ontario History and Social Science Teachers Association. We're a volunteer organization of practicing history and social science teachers in Ontario in elementary and secondary levels. And we've been serving our members since 1978. We also do want to take a time to thank OTF, the Ontario Teachers Federation, for allowing us to use their Zoom platform so we can continue to stay connected with educators across the province. I just want to turn it over to our two amazing presenters, so Diane Batour and Corto Zambelli-Tardif.
Hi, everybody. I'm Diane, and I'm a secondary school teacher in Toronto. I'm currently the vice president of OHASSTA, and I was the lead on this course package project. It's actually a three-phase project. This was the first phase of the project with funding from the Ministry of Education. And to your great surprise and my great surprise, this government has funded civic education with a pretty good amount of funding for us to support civics teachers over the next little while. And of course, we said thank you and jumped on the chance because that doesn't happen very often. Corto is new to our OHASSTA organization, and he also is a secondary school teacher in Toronto. He teaches in French and teaches also in the Canadian World Studies department at his school, and he contributed to both the English and French course package in the summer of 2022. He was one of the writer reviewers. And we will also be having a French webinar next week if you have any French colleagues. I do also want to make a plug. I will put a link in the chat for our second phase of the project, which is a mentorship program project. And we are hiring civics mentors. So if you or anyone you know is an experienced civics teacher, in any of the areas that we are calling out for, which are things like role plays and game-based learning, assessment and evaluation, political thinking or inquiry skills, elections and voting, Indigenous perspectives and ways of knowing or governance, rights and responsibilities in the charter, or maybe even something that we have not mentioned on that page. If you feel like you would like to share, you're looking for professional development, maybe you are the only civics teacher in your school, or you are just looking to grow with a group of people who are interested and eager to learn about civic education, you can apply to be a mentor, but you can also, that is a paid position and it's a fairly good pay. So if you're looking for that as well, you should think about applying as a mentor, but you can also apply as a mentee. And that is if you're new to the civics program or you would like to learn a little bit about something that you feel like you need some professional development on. We have listed the areas in which we will try to look for mentors. You can also join as a mentee. And we will be pairing mentors and mentees hopefully by March break. And then we will launch the program after March break. And at the end of the day, you will work with a team to develop whatever product you end up developing, and we will share it provincially. We'd also like to start today with a poll just to see who is here. So you should see a poll pop up on your screen and asking you what part of Ontario you're from and how many times you've taught civics. And while that is on, Cordo, you can switch to the Korea. Perfect. So we're very happy to see 33 people here today. One of the great challenges we have, of course, is meeting and reaching all of our teachers across the province. And OHASSTA, I think, does a really good job doing that. And that's why the ministry often contacts us to do these call outs and do these networking opportunities and professional development opportunities for our teachers in Ontario. So we have 24 respondents of 31. And if we take a look, we do have a great representation from Southern Ontario, but I'm so happy to see people here from the North. And we have one person from the East. I was born in the Maritimes, so there is an Easterner in me. And then West Ontario, we have also one person out of 24. So when we talk about the experience in the room, we've got 6 first-time teachers, so welcome. It is a great course with so much opportunity, and we are very happy to provide you with this free course package that Corto will be explaining and giving you an overview of today. And then we have a good number of people who've taught it more than 5 times. And the sort of good thing about civics, but also the maybe tiring part about it, is that you have to keep updating and refreshing the course. Certainly if you live in the Toronto area, we've had a very dramatic governmental week or so. So you can't just create your curriculum resources and then let them sit there. So we are always updating, and as government changes, values and beliefs and systems change, we too have to change. So we hope that this package will meet you where you are, whether you're a first-time teacher or you've taught more than 5 times. And those of you who are the 14 out of 25, please do consider applying as a mentor. And those of you who are here who've taught it less than 5 times, we are very, very excited to have you potentially as mentees and walk you through being a new civics and citizenship teacher. I know lots of times it may not be your subject area, so we would love to mentor you through that process. So without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Corto. Corto is having some technical difficulties in his Toronto school. That is a bunker. And so he's going to shut his video off to do this presentation to save some bandwidth and some RAM, I guess, on his computer. And I'm going to close the poll. I hope that's enough. Hello, Joe from Windsor. Okay, Corto.
Thank you very much, Diane. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Corto Zimbelli Tardif reporting to you live from a very bunker-like school in northern Toronto. Diane, is my audio okay?
Yes.
Wonderful. All right, so I hope that everybody who is here in this webinar today, we are very, very thankful to have you here today. We are all aware of the OHASSTA ASHO website. Hopefully, most of you are acquainted with the fact that this course package exists and where to access it. If not, it's at OHASSTA-ASHO, it's this acronym up here on top, .education, and then it's CHV Resources 2022, new exclamation mark on top. And that is the page I am looking at right now. Now, I worked with a wonderful team of both Anglophone and Francophone teachers last summer to create this course package. Sadly, not in time for September, but we are here in semester 2, ready to share the completed package with you. And we took a backwards design approach to it, meaning that we designed the course culminating activity first, and then did the unit culminatings, and then did all the individual lessons. So I'm going to be looking at the English language package today. So for the 3 units, the course culminating is the first links you will see. So unit 1, unit 2, unit 3. However, the course culminating is at the end down here. So if you click those links at the top of the page, it'll send you where you want to go. So I do recommend looking at the final culminating task first. I've already made copies of everything and I have them up in tabs.
Yes.
I've seen a Google Doc. Are we all seeing the same thing? Yes? Okay, wonderful. So the idea is that your students are going to do the 3 components of the final course culminating over the course of your 9 or 10 weeks in the civics half course. Or my apologies, you might be at a non-semester school and you are doing this course over months. But you do the 3 components of the final culminating task as unit culminating assignments, after which you will then do the final culminating task, which is made up of the exact same steps. 3 steps are You first do research on a civic issue of your choice. You then write a campaign proposal. We will address that verbiage in a moment. And then step 3, you create a campaign tool to raise awareness for the civic issue of your choice, as well as an action plan. Now, the phrasing we used here in the package we created is that we imagined that you would do that each student would research 2 civic issues. They would do research on one civic issue and formulate a plan of action in response to that issue over the course of the term, so for their unit culminatings, and then for the final culminating task as part or as all of the final 30%, do a second civic issue and just do the exact same steps based on the feedback that the teacher provided. However, please do not take any part of this course package as prescriptive. You might consider it completely appropriate for students to simply apply the feedback given on their unit culminating tasks to do the final culminating for their final achievement. Now, I am unable to survey the chat. I'm going to repeat these points as I go through the culminatings, but please, if there is any confusion at any point, I will be glad to clarify. So the final culminating task looks like this. We have an inventory, a menu, if you will, of pressing civic issues that address a wide variety of equity-seeking groups, of civic issues that really are in the Canadian news that students will see if they are paying attention to social media or legacy news sources, or a combination of both, which we hope is another set of skills that students will develop over this course, which is to pay more attention and care more about the news and news literacy. And these are some of the topics that in the summer of 2022, we were identifying as quite pressing. You may, of course, peruse this on your own time. Indigenous treaty rights, for example, is something that is both explicit curriculum now and that we have lessons about in both units 1 and 2. Possibly unit 3, I'm not quite sure. So the first part of the culminating is to do research. So this table that we are looking at right now, I set at the top to keep clarifying throughout. So we do the classic W5H questions as we do research. Who is the issue about? What is the issue about? And the key concept in this course, of course, involves what principles of democracy are relevant here. Is it government transparency? Is it equity or equality? Is it human rights? That sort of thing. Does the issue occur during a certain time frame? When does the issue occur? Where does the issue occur? And why is it happening? Now, all of these frameworks and tables and charts that we have for you in this course package, of course, feel free to edit it, tear it up, put it back together in any way that you feel is most appropriate for your school's needs, your board's mission, and your personal professional judgment as a teacher. We continue the research down here. We now have to do connections to the political thinking concepts, which I certainly was not totally aware when I started teaching. The political thinking concepts mirror the historical thinking concepts and the geographical thinking concepts elsewhere in the mandatory courses in the Ontario curriculum that students will hopefully be somewhat familiar with. So based on the criteria, which is available in Unit 1, because again, this part of the culminating reflects the Unit 1 culminating task, we talked about political significance, which perspectives we need to consider, what has changed and what has stayed the same regarding how the issue is developing, that is stability and change, what change is desired in terms of our objectives, or my apologies, the objectives possibly of the actors involved in the civic issue, and then how is change being made, and what types of civic action are being used by citizens and by governments and by groups to achieve intended results. Finally, the final thinking question here is who has the political power to make change? Regarding this issue, how do I know about it? With, of course, the expectation that students must always be grounding their thinking in evidence. I'm just going to do a check. Are we still doing okay for clarity of audio?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, I'll just proceed until I get a note otherwise then. All right, we're still in step one. We want to make sure that students are writing about civic issues that are relevant to themselves, to their communities, to their schools, to their neighborhoods. And of course, as a professional, you may want to move this personal connection to the top of this process, right? As the students do research on the civic issue, why are you choosing this one? What is your personal connection? To the extent that students are comfortable with sharing that, of course. And these are fairly general questions about how and why students are making personal connections, but it is prompting them to elaborate their own thoughts and write somewhat extensively about them. Not at all. Now, that was all step one. So everything that we just went over reflects the unit one culminating that students originally did. Once again, they may want to do the exact same civic issue for the course culminating and just my apologies, apply the feedback cycle that you have provided them with, or they may do a second separate civic issue, perhaps based on what they've discussed with their peers as they've been comparing notes. Whatever feels most appropriate to you. Now, step two is in the writing process, we call this the campaign proposal. It is more similar to a public awareness campaign. So the word campaign is definitely relevant. Step two is not really proposing a campaign per se. It is more similar to raising awareness about the issue itself. All right, so they recapitulate what their topic was based on their unit one culminating and the feedback that was provided. They describe the change that has to be made, who are the affected groups, what action has already been taken, perhaps if they have already been in contact with the affected group or if they are part of the affected group themselves. And now is where we start cycling in the awareness, the civic awareness of change in Canada is actually made through the government. At what level of government are you operating? To whom do we take this issue? How do we contact our representative with their information here? And then what action are we going to take to address this issue now that students have a better sense of how change is made in Canada specifically? So again, this is not so much a proposal for a campaign as what you would do during an awareness campaign itself, focused on the actions they are going to take and addressing the correct movers and shakers, the correct roles of significance in the Canadian structure, in the Canadian governance system. And then of course, they can provide questions down here for you to provide more feedback on as they move through the steps. Finally, step three, which of course reflects unit 3 of our course package, the awareness campaign tool and action plan, which of course responds to that final overall expectation in the curriculum, taking civic action, which is always the most exciting part, but also potentially the most challenging. So we provided much choice. Writing team thought it was always good to provide students with choice that they would find the most relevant or the most effective at communicating their issue. You know, the medium determines the message, as Marshall McLuhan once said, or the medium is the message. My apologies, I should know that. Wonderful. So of course you may add to or subtract from this list as you find appropriate. Some students are quite overwhelmed by choice, others are perfectly fine at operating within it. And of course, you should approve the campaign awareness tool before the student begins. So we have a number of questions down here. This is the final step of the culminating. There's 1, 2, 3 steps reflecting the 1, 2, 3 units. And for our third and final unit, students should be a little bit more aware of the human rights documents at the international, national, and provincial levels. The ones we provided were the ones that we provided explicit lessons on were the United Nations Declaration on Human Rights, the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the Ontario Human Rights Code, and there are lessons in Unit 2 about the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. So some connections to the rights documents should be made during this last step in order to gear the campaign tool in a relevant direction, because students should be explicitly connecting what human rights violations might be happening pertaining to this civic issue that they have chosen. this question is explicitly asked out here. And we gave the caveat that if students are having difficulty connecting to a specific human right that is named in those documents, since this is rather higher level thinking in terms of what they are reading, if they can't connect to one of the specific human rights, they have to make an argument as to why their issue should be considered or should be connected to a human right if it isn't already. Once again, we have to return to what is already being done within the Canadian or international system to try to address this issue. They should pick one level of relevance to focus their research a little bit more, and then go from whatever level they chose to, they always have to go to the local connections. What local organizations are you contacting to learn more about your issue? This is more relevant to expectation C1, which is something to the effect of what local opportunities are there for service, for volunteering, and for civic action. And finally,
I'm just gonna cut in for a second. So, Corto,
yes.
Everyone here, you'll know your students. So in terms of what they're able to contact and able to do, those might just be local groups or extracurricular clubs in your school that they could connect with, something like Stop the Stigma or any other group that addresses social issues. They could connect locally within the school, or if you have local organizations, depending on your context of where your school is located, they can go outside of the school. If that's too challenging for your students, you can keep it at like an international, national, provincial level. So just kind of go with your students on that.
Alrighty. Once more, thank you very much, Diane. Yes, so if it seems daunting, keep it as local as the actual school community. There's plenty of issues, I'm sure, in every school for students to make connections to and care a lot about already. But of course, be as ambitious as you feel is appropriate. Now, as usual, they're going to apply the feedback cycle. What parts of the campaign proposal need to change and need to improve based on their reflection on the human rights issues that are at stake. And finally, they are going to plan the specific improvements to their campaign to achieve the best possible results, linking back to that political thinking concept of objectives and intended and unintended results. And lastly, of course, we do love a final reflection to consolidate why the student cares about this issue. We provided some suggested prompts here with the idea that in the scope of the civics course, which again is either 5 months, day one, day two, or at most 9 weeks in a semester model with, I'm sure, interruptions, it is not always possible to communicate the action plan to the school. So reflection questions here in part on who an appropriate audience would be, why would they care about this issue, and how would you effectively communicate your final product to your audience? If you did, how would you measure its impact? Again, this is fodder, this is evidence for their understanding of political thinking, specifically objectives and results when it comes to the communication of the issues they care about. Finally, what does the student hope to change or achieve with their final product? These bigger ideas about civic awareness, about civic engagement. Why do we take civic action? Why does learning about civics and citizenship matter so much? And why does it matter in their lives? Because they don't always believe that changing the law is possible. They aren't always able to see how that is possible for someone like them. But students have changed the world, and we know that, and we should show them that. Finally, we do demand in every Ontario course, of course, that students credit their sources. That is up to the discretion of the teacher what format to use. I have been in scenarios where a fully cited list of proper MLA or APA citation style is appropriate, and others where we just want the links to approved websites before at the time. And finally, we did provide an option for self-assessment for all of our culminating assignments in all 4 categories, followed by the rubric, which of course we completely invite you to edit to your heart's content. We have some suggestions here as to what you are assessing, but I would personally recommend for this to be personalized to make the success criteria of your particular final culminating crystal clear to your students. Communication, application, making connections, the personal connection to the issue, and are you applying and transferring knowledge throughout the course? Of course, above we have the political thinking aspect of it all. Alrighty, so that is again, to repeat, the final culminating is the product of the previous 3 unit culminatings. So I will now take you to the Unit 1 culminating. If we're looking back at the landing page for the course package, Unit 1 begins with the evaluation, which you can open in Google Drive, for example. The PDF is, of course, read-only. The Google Drive copy you can edit and change to your heart's content before you send it out to students. We're back here at researching the civic issue. Now, the reason I'm showing you now all the culminatings one by one after I've already shown you the course culminating is the format of how we designed the unit culminating tasks is significant and will require, of course, active planning on your behalf as well. The lessons here that are numbered, every unit culminating that we have for you begins with a list of the lessons as we organize them in the order that we have provided them. However, let us be quite honest, the civics curriculum, we might say, for a 9-week course for a half credit is quite packed. I think most of us who have taught this course before can agree on that. And I might add, as someone who has closely looked at the ministry's expectations for CHV 2.0, the new expectations for the 2022 course are not so much, nothing is really lessened. It might seem that some expectations are taken out, but they're really folded and massaged into other things that were already there. And important considerations have been added. So I would absolutely argue that the current curriculum expectations are more than they were in the past, even if it might seem the same length or less. For example, there is mandatory learning about the Indian Act, the treaty making process, and a variety of other things that you can peruse on your own time. So yes, we have the list of lessons here that we designed in the summer writing program. But as usual, I would really recommend that you open the culminating documents yourself and edit the list of lessons to reflect what you are actually going to focus on. So if you feel it appropriate to cut so that you want students to really master, that should be there. Or the common good are big, we probably want to keep in some way, shape, or form. But you might want to trim what is in the lessons or expand on other things and so on. So just to clarify, do not consider this unit, do not consider this list of unit lessons or the course package itself. It is not prescriptive. Do not presume that you have to do everything. You really don't have to do everything. But of course, the culminating tasks and what the students are reflecting on should reflect what you have actually done. But as in the course culminating, the students are going to start the course by doing research on civic issues. Again, you might want to change this sentence if you're only doing one civic issue, if each student is only doing one civic issue for evaluation, or you might want to keep it if they're doing 2 separate ones. This is the same list as we already saw. Now, with the Unit 1 culminating, we were quite specific about how to break down the assessment and evaluation of students, how students can be organized in their thinking in all these charts with the progress checklists and so on. The other unit culminatings are not as prescriptive. This is the Unit 1 culminating and its corresponding information in the course culminating. Are a little bit more specific, kind of to display the pedagogical practice we were imagining as we were writing. For example, the explicit connections to the political thinking concepts are here. I would encourage people to assess the political thinking concepts, at least 1 or 2 of them in every unit culminating. But we explicitly did it here to sort of foreground that this is important to the students throughout the course, and that this is the sort of the thinking habits we are developing as we do this. One application task that we have here in the Unit 1 culminating is to pretend they're going on the morning announcements at their school to bring awareness to the issue. And of course, now at my school, we have TV announcements. We have TV announcements that are sort of streamed into the classrooms every morning. Difficult as it may be to believe with the wonderful internet connection that we are displaying right now. But it does work in the mornings, at least. So you might want to make this an actual communicative task, an authentic task, as we say in the language department, that students actually do. You might want some of these civic issues to be discussed in your school community, and that would be really wonderful to develop students' engagement throughout the course. But this, of course, again, is merely one component. It is a suggestion of how to develop students' thinking and taking evidence seriously and communicating to an audience. Once again, we have a progress checklist here. We are making connections to the principles of democracy, which we discussed in Unit 1, the importance of using solid evidence and statistics, and do we understand through our reading of the news, through our discussions in class, through our jigsaw activities, through our direct lessons, do we understand what civic issues are being taken pertaining to this issue already? What is actually happening in the real world of our communities of Canada, etc. And then we have the same personal connection framework we had in the course culminating, and so on, self-assessment, and there we are. It's the exact same organization. Now, I'm going to pause if there are questions for the Unit 1 culminating for now, because I have been talking for a fair number of minutes.
Yeah, so if anyone has any questions about the course summative, we have one question from Cynthia. How long from research to finish are students given to complete this culminating activity? So this is Unit 1, and if you divide the course into threes or into thirds, you have 55 hours in the course. So you would have probably about 15 hours per unit, and that translates into 15, 16, 17 classes. So you're looking at roughly a month of class. And so if you start it at the beginning and guide students through it as you do the different lessons, you have some times during that unit plan for them to work on it. I would say that it's reasonable to do this in a 3 to 4 week time frame. And given how tightly packed this course seems to be, do you have any recommendations for a first-time teacher of civics? Yes, I would say first and foremost, get to know your students. So I do plan my course and my units, but I do take some time to first get to know the students to really ascertain what they're able to do. And if I feel like the unit culminating task is too big, or the lessons are not going to work with the students in front of me, then I'll make adjustments based on who I have in front of me. So my biggest recommendation is to know who you're teaching first, and don't think that you're going to plan this all out and it doesn't matter who's in front of you. So for example, I taught my 2 civics courses in the first semester, and I'm teaching it completely differently for the third civics class that I have now. Not, in a different order and different because they're a different type of class. Sometimes you have students who participate a lot and sometimes you don't. So if you have to create tasks in which they can participate virtually or in different ways, as you get more experienced in the course, you'll be able to do those things. So give yourself the grace and the time to get to know who's in front of you. And you can always be creative in how you evaluate the expectations. We've certainly given you enough here so that every overall expectation is evaluated, and you just need to evaluate the overalls. So those would be my 2 greatest recommendations. But if anyone else in the group here has any suggestions for our wonderful new civics teachers in terms of recommendations about how to cover the expectations, you can certainly chime in, raise your hand. That'd be great too. So you have a semestered year in civics runs about 10 weeks, yes. So you have usually 9 to 10 weeks. So yes, each unit would take 3 weeks, each unit. So the culminating task, if you started at the beginning of the unit, would be due at the end of the 3 weeks. And don't forget that each culminating builds on each other. So the first one is probably the most hands-on that you'll need to be with them. And then at the second one, a little bit less hands-on. The third one, you could even fold the third one into the summative if you have to, and the summative is really just redoing the steps of the first 3. So they shouldn't have any surprises in that course summative. And in my teaching experience, I find that to be the most successful when you do have the students have the chance to practice and revise, and be able to do well on that 30% or whatever percentage you're giving your summative. And Vanessa is actually has taught these courses or has taught these lessons, it looked like, if you wanted to chime in, Vanessa.
Sorry. Yeah, so there were a couple of lessons that I just sort of pulled some of the sort of interior out just to sort of shorten them up. A couple of the minds on, I just shortened up, or I exchanged them for something I had done before just to meet the needs of the students that I had, again, in front of me. Yeah, my students were definitely not all really strong readers or strong writers. And so I just, as I bounced around the classroom, I just kind of gave out what needed, what supports needed to be given on an individual basis. So.
Yes. So, once you get to know your students, you'll be able to, that's the most fun part about being a teacher. It's so dynamic. You can plan and plan and plan, but those bodies in front of you will throw some wrenches in there. So we've tried to give you sort of a template, like a skeletal almost templates here that you can adjust to meet your students' needs. Certainly, we're not expecting you to do everything. And yes, there will always be a wide range of students in civics and careers. I personally prefer that as a teacher. Because you get a lot of what I call it spice or flavor in the class, and you do want to also keep them engaged and excited about being an active citizen. So we try to make it so that they can see themselves in their communities as part of their societies and learning how to take that action. So I would say keep it very less theoretical and much more active and much more dynamic so that they see themselves in the society that they live in. And, by the end of it, they feel like they can make that difference. Okay, so I think we should probably show them Unit 2. So Unit 2 culminating is going to look very much like Unit 1. They're sticking to the same issue, and at this point, they have learned some more content. And then there is the second task, which is to create what we're calling a campaign proposal. Over to you, Cordo.
Wonderful. Yes. So as Diane said, the course as we are giving it to you is pretty well designed. That Unit 1 is the introduction of Strand A, which is the political thinking and transferable skills, including reading the news, being able to discuss current events in a responsible manner, and making those connections. Unit 2 focuses on integrating, as we have suggested, what we call the sort of content knowledge of civics, Strand B, the sort of didactic information about how the system actually works, with a little bit of active citizenship at the end there. And then Unit 3 will be that final, actually, my apologies, no. Unit 3 is rights and responsibilities. It's expectation B3, and Strand C is sort of sprinkled throughout. My apologies. Strand C is the one that's sprinkled throughout. Right, so Unit 2, with a bit more knowledge about how the Canadian system works, this is where students refine their understanding of their civic issue and how we can take action on it within the Canadian system. Again, what's the affected group need? What action has been taken? Who do we address to have our issue handled or to get some sort of a response in some way? And then things that, again, that the students themselves can do already before the age of majority to attempt to make change. So here you will see it's a much shorter skeleton of a unit assignment, of a unit evaluation, my apologies. There are assignments throughout the course. It's a much more skeletal unit evaluation because we sort of provided all of the didactic direction in Unit 1, and then Unit 2, again, based on the specifics of what students successfully learn in that unit, it can sort of be rearranged to match what their interests are, where their interests are going, and what sort of dynamic discussions where the sort of wider import and significance and relevance of the civic issues will be made clear. So now we're looking at Unit 3. And as we see, this is the list of human rights documents that I enumerated before that are referenced in the course culminating, and that students will be expected to make direct connections to, or at least argue why their civic issue does involve human rights in some way. Climate change is used as an example of human rights issues and violations. And then there is a lesson on global sustainability goals as defined by the United Nations. Has
Okay.
Okay. So this is the same list of options for communicating their action plan or their awareness campaign tool. You can use either label. The curriculum uses action plan as sort of the default terminology for what students are doing towards the end of the course to communicate sort of the results of their political inquiry. But in more layman's terms, this is the tool that students are using to bring awareness to their civic issue, regardless of whether or not you have the capacity in your class to communicate this to an audience. So this reflection down here is similar to what we have in the course culminating. If you want to see a copy of the Unit 3 culminating that is exactly the same, it is the copy on Google. It is the Google Drive copy specifically.
Yes, and I'm just going there now, so give me a second. Okay, do you see it? 1 second. Gosh, I'm a Google Meet person. Okay, do you see it, this Unit 3 culminating task?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, okay. So it looks exactly like the unit.
Yes.
This course summative.
Yes.
Yes, and we're going to update the PDF on the drive.
All right, so to recapitulate before we move on to specific lessons that we loved a lot in our development of the course, the Unit 1 culminating is sort of gauging your students' ability to do research, caring about the news specifically, news literacy, and the skill base that is required throughout the civics course. Then Unit 2 brings in the understanding of the Canadian governance system. And then Unit 3 brings in the relevance of human rights and the action plan that students intend to take based on the feedback they have received on all of their unit culminatings up to this point. My apologies, the chat is here. In some sort of a centralized, in some sort of a centralized school website. Where the wonderful creations of the entire school community are shared, if you are so lucky. Right, so you form small groups, you pick an example for maybe Lincoln Alexander or Nelson Mandela, slides to create a solid set of notes on their achievements of those heroes of democracy, followed by peer edits, so that we get a lot of collaboration happening, which was one of the most successful parts of virtual learning, I do feel, despite all the heartache that it caused, like bad connections. Alrighty. So this leads, hopefully, the intention was that it leads directly into the finalization of the Unit 1 culminating with the very concrete examples of Heroes of Democracy being the final piece for students to think about why their civic issue matters to them, what actions have been taken, what civic action even looks like in very concrete terms that are easy for students to define. Yeah,
And
so we
so
were all very,
for everyone
Mhm.
here, does this look like something that your students could do? Create a slide deck. What I tend to do is they're flexible groupings. So you can have 2 students or 4 students, 3, 1. It doesn't really matter in terms of the numbers. If you have students who are overwhelmed with choice, you can assign them the individual. And you can also expand this if you have a lot of international students for them to pick somebody from their home country. The concept of civic hero and civic actions doesn't have to be a Canadian or someone from Ontario. It's just in terms of who you have in front of you. So thank you, Lorraine. Yes. Okay, so Cordo, you'd like to highlight one more?
Yes.
Okay, can you
We're
put the
just going
link?
to, yes, indeed. We're just going to briefly show you the resources we have collated in an attempt to respond responsibly to what is, in fact, well, I'll say that it is new to the curriculum. It's the aspect of strand B2 where to the Canadian governance system has been added how Indigenous people how Indigenous peoples govern themselves. And this is this lesson plan contains a lot of resources written by Indigenous peoples, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit in their own words and designed for educational purposes for the most part, or at minimum from the official websites of the responsible organizations and governing systems, how they govern themselves. So this lesson is less sort of closed and directed than maybe some others. It is less prescriptive in that sense. We want students at the start of the lesson, if we could zoom in just a little bit on step 2 right in front of us. The intention was that students, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Invite students, thank you, Diane, very much. And then as it proceeds, we have provided a number of things here. One, the links to all of the documents in the words of Indigenous people themselves to clarify how their governance structures work, many of which are designed already for the teacher to study before teaching. Resources like the Canadian Encyclopedia. And also, if we scroll down a bit farther, we get to the Indigenous governance symbols, which you can combine with strategies for visible thinking, which we have integrated throughout the course to attempt to get students talking more, wondering more, prompting them to do more research and develop a better understanding of credible sources when it comes to Indigenous people. Because I am observing, just very anecdotally, that even though I do feel students are becoming much more aware of the importance of understanding Indigenous people, but I'm not sure that their knowledge base itself is expanding. So this lesson is our humble contribution to that effort with many wonderful resources, I believe designed in part by Vanessa for some of the thinking tools here. I may be wrong.
Yeah, the chart is mine. I spoke with the former chief of Wikwamakan to get some information, and then a Métis leader from Saskatchewan. The image bank was put together, I think, by someone else.
Yes, that I was aware of. Thank you very much, Vanessa. Yes, so this can be turned into, like, for example, you could focus just in on one of these resources as a full class. You could do it as a jigsaw, as we have suggested here. That may or may not be the best approach for your particular context, depending on what students can or are willing to do versus what you are comfortable with doing yourself. But this is a very significant component of the civics course that has been made, that in the past could have been read into the expectations, but is now very clearly and explicitly at the forefront of what we want students to be doing really across the Ontario curriculum, as we are seeing with more and more school boards adopting, for example, the NBE3U course and NBE3C courses for the grade 11 English credit. So anything we can do to sort of streamline that process so that students understand either themselves or the Indigenous peoples who live on the land that they share is always to the good. There's other components of it sprinkled throughout the course, but that is the lesson in Unit 2 where it is very foregrounded in preparation for students writing about in their unit culminating who they would contact and what actions they can take pertaining to their civic issue. Is there anything else you want to talk about there? Sorry, Dan, you're muted.
I think everyone's probably ready to go. I think many of us have a PA day tomorrow, so we are happy to wish you a wonderful Thursday night of maybe no marking or prepping. And if you don't have PA day, my apologies. Enjoy your Friday, but I know everybody has Monday off, so we hope that this day worked for you in terms of your workload. And if you have any questions, you can certainly contact us off the OHASSTA website. There's a contact us email address, and we hope you use these resources. If you catch anything you think we need to address, please let us know. And thank you so much for coming.